Hello and welcome back to the Campus Ministry Show. I'm Father Stephen Logue, chaplain of Lancaster Catholic High School and host of the show. It's great to be back after a little absence to get back into the swing of things, especially as we're starting Lent. And so, whenever we start Lent and we're reminded again of prayer, fasting, and almsgiving, the three practices that we're supposed to have in Lent, but in particular we're reminded of the very Lenten practices of meatless Fridays, I always think back to a Twitter post from Jaden Smith, the son of Will Smith, who a couple of years ago, in encouraging people to live a more vegan lifestyle, a lifestyle less dependent on meat, he proposed to the world, hey, how about if everybody agreed to just go meatless Fridays? And when I saw that, I thought, we've been doing that for a couple thousand years. And that's a great context, a great insight into a reality that we can sometimes take for granted, and that is our spiritual practices, our spiritual ideas, the things that we encourage for our spiritual health, they don't just stop there. The benefits they provide don't just stop with our prayer life, with our relationship with God. Here's an example to maybe put it in a context. We're learning more and more in the scientific realm the physical toll that stress can have on our bodies. Stress seems like a purely psychological reality. It's going on in our heads, it's keeping our heads occupied, and for our psychological health, we would want to deal with stress. But we're seeing that when we are stressed, when we have that big burden psychologically, it takes a tremendous toll on us physically. A perfect example of this is to look at photos of just about any president before they take office and when they leave office. You can see the stress visualized, like right in front of you, the impact that it had on their bodies. In the same way that our psychological health is linked to our physical health, our spiritual health is linked to our physical and our psychological health. So let's take a look at our three Lenten practices and how that might be. First and foremost, we have fasting. Fasting is a very spiritual practice. It's been part of our faith forever, since well into the days of the Old Testament. And yet, surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, science is realizing more and more that certain periods of fasting are really good for us physically. They're good for the health of our body. They're helpful for regulating our cholesterol and our stress hormones and all of these different things, controlling body weight more easily. All of these things are accomplished well through fasting. Surprise! Our spiritual health impacts our physical health. Another one, of course, is prayer. I think we're rediscovering now as a society the value of what the secular world might call meditation. And now it can take a lot of different forms, but sort of at its root, a lot of the good comes from taking time away, taking time in quiet, taking time to reflect, not getting so caught up in the noise and busyness of the world. Surprise, surprise, all things that prayer accomplishes for us, and then some. And then the third one, almsgiving. This one almost goes without saying, right? If almsgiving is good for me spiritually, what good does it provide out in the world? Well, obvious. We can see it. When I give to charity, it has a real tangible impact on the lives of other people. What's sort of amazing about the idea of almsgiving, which is a very Judeo-Christian value, it doesn't make sense in a materialist world, a world that's entirely focused on the only thing that matters is matter. There's no spirit, there's no soul, there's nothing supernatural. It's just just biological, just programming. We're just biological machines. Because if we were just animals, if we were just biological machines, then there would be no reason for me to care about anyone out there. There'd be no benefit for me to share my resources beyond myself, my immediate family, and maybe my friends. And yet, we can all recognize the good in doing that. And so, back to our analogy of stress, the way stress, a psychological thing, impacts our physical health pretty substantially. If I am worried about my physical health and recognizing that there's stress in my life and that's, creating a burden on my physical health, and I want to deal with that, I have to deal with that in the realm of my psychological health. I can't just sit here physically and tighten my muscles and tense up and say, I will not be stressed, I will not be stressed. That doesn't really accomplish anything. I have to go into the psychological realm in order to get the benefit that I'm looking for physically. And so when we recognize the benefits that prayer, fasting, almsgiving, other religious practices have in other parts of our lives, we should not just try and achieve them through half measures, but we should venture into that spiritual realm and say, okay, then I'm going to grapple with prayer, I'm going to grapple with fasting, I'm going to grapple with almsgiving, because I know that beyond the benefit in the spiritual realm, there will also be benefits in other parts of my life, my physical health, my psychological health, the health of my relationships with other people. I hope that can be just a little bit of encouragement to us to recognize the value of our Lenten practices and how they're rooted in who we are as human beings, not just something extra made up or contrived or meant to make our lives more complicated. So from all of us here at Lancaster Catholic, have a blessed Lent and continue to grow closer to God through these wonderful practices. God bless. And stay tuned next week for a discussion on why exactly Catholics always have Jesus on the cross instead of an empty cross. Because it's after Easter, why wouldn't the cross be empty? We'll answer that next week.